Kayla Rodriguez. I am a 22-year-old Puerto Rican autistic lesbian, which makes me unique. I know people who are either lesbian or autistic or Puerto Rican, but I'm the only one I know who is all three. That's kind of hard for me because I feel like there is no one like me. Hopefully, by sharing my story, I will discover more women like me. In addition to being autistic, I have type 1 diabetes, OCD, PTSD, depression, and anxiety. I think I also might have bipolar 2 disorder as well. Today, I would like to share my story, so if any women went through all or any that I have been through, that they won't feel alone. Autistic women exist and need to be heard. So today, I'm going to let my voice be heard. I was born on November 23rd, 1996. I lived in New York for the first 8 years of my life. When I was 3 years old, my mom and dad got divorced and I was diagnosed with PDD. I didn't start talking until I was 4. My PDD later developed into Asperger's syndrome, but since that term is being thrown out of use, now I say I'm just autistic. My autism affects me in a number of different ways. Some I grew out of, some I didn't. For instance, I used to be quiet and not look people in the eye, but I grew out of that because my mom trained me to look people in the eye, and my best friend helped me get out of my shell. The ways autism affects me is by making me sensitive to loud noises. It makes me repeat myself. It makes me message people too much. It makes me have poor social skills. It makes me not consider other people's wants and needs. And it makes me speak loudly. I also have a hard time adapting to changes. It also makes me have high anxiety and have meltdowns. Stress is a big challenge for me. It also makes it hard for me to deal with my emotions. Autistics are known to have obsessions, and I have a lot of them. As a child, I was obsessed with Barney until I was 8, and I was also obsessed with Scooby-Doo and Sesame Street. I used to watch a lot of TV because I was lucky to grow up in an era where there was good children's television. But now I'm obsessed with video games. I feel bad for all the money my mom spent on me to fulfill my obsessions. I was very dependent on my mom and other people, and while I've gotten a lot better, I'm still not very independent, and I never want to live by myself. Despite these challenges, I accept my autism, and I'm proud to be autistic because it makes me different, and it makes me who I am, and it makes me have a unique perspective on the world. Unfortunately, since I am a woman, and most people who are diagnosed with autism are men, I learned that there's not a lot of autistics like me, and there's not a lot of people that accept me either. The year after I got diagnosed and my mom and dad divorced, she got remarried. On December 1st, 2004, during my 3rd grade year, and 8 days after I turned 8 years old, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes affects everything about your body except for your lungs. I have poor circulation in my feet because of it. I have to test my blood sugar several times a day, and I have to inject insulin into myself 3 times a day. I never really controlled it. The month I was diagnosed, I moved to Florida, away from my extended family. When I started my new school, I started getting bullied by my classmates and my teacher, Miss Ryan. I was known for being so kind, but when Miss Ryan started bullying me, I had my first ever bad thought of wanting to hurt her. She was so mean to me and made me sit at another table away from everyone, and she didn't stop the bullies in the classroom. My classmates called me Miss Diabetes to make fun of me. When I had a crush on a boy in my classroom, these girls who bullied me made me meet up with the boy and forced me to kiss him, and he kicked me. Because of the bullying, because of the bullying, I wanted to be invisible. And because of Miss Ryan bullying me, I also developed a fear of teachers that lasted until the end of high school. I was doing really well in school before I moved to Florida, but my performance in school dropped considerably due to all the bullying. By the end of 3rd grade, my mom found out about it and sued the Board of Education, and she got Miss Ryan fired. Once I remembered during a school award ceremony, I was supposed to be getting an award along with my other classmates, but they didn't call my name. I noticed it, but I didn't do anything about it because I didn't want to draw attention to myself. However, my mom did, and she went up and made them give me the award. This is the first time I saw what advocacy was because I saw my mom advocate for me. By the time I reached 4th grade, the bullying ended, but I still didn't fit in. I often made efforts to make people accept me, like sing for them or make them laugh, but they still didn't understand me. I wished my mom saw what it was like for me. My elementary school and middle school didn't understand me either, and didn't take much effort to try to. Even when I first went to therapy, my mom had to look up the definition of autism for the therapist because the therapist didn't know what it was. She Xeroxed and handed out autism literature for the teachers so they could be more aware. Back then, autism wasn't well known, and when people were diagnosed as autistic, it was mostly boys. So coming of age as an autistic girl was very hard. During elementary school in Florida, my dad was not involved in my life at all, and my stepfather became abusive. I became scared of him because he was an alcoholic, and he used to fight with my mom all the time. My sister and I had to stay in our rooms when they fought because it was so loud and scary. My stepfather always threatened to throw out our cats. He expected us to clean and cook for him and do chores while he sat on the couch watching soccer. I remember one time my mom and him had a fight, and he pushed her to the ground and tried to choke her. It was also weird how he treated me because he was always very close to me. Perhaps too close, as I later found out. When I was put in those close situations, it was very hard for me to react due to my autism. I was an autistic child, so I didn't know the social cues as to whether this was wrong or not. I was oblivious to the fact that it was wrong. This happened all the while I discovered my sexuality. In May of 2007, I met my first ever best friend, who I fell in love with because she was so kind and so beautiful, and she was the first person to accept me that was outside of my family for who I am. She was straight, so nothing ever happened between us romantically, but she made me realize I liked girls. Even though I was very kind to people, I was still alone. Other than my two friends I had no real friends, and I was alone in my room a lot, and I still am to this very day. The effects of struggling with my feelings for my best friend, not feeling in at school, being lonely, all the bullying in my family life eventually led me to becoming suicidal. I started having meltdowns and fights with my family. In 2008, I planned for the first time to kill myself, and I wrote my first suicide note and addressed it to my first ever best friend who I was in love with. Suicide is a hidden epidemic in autistic people. In studies conducted a few years ago, 11 to 14% of kids who are autistic have considered suicide, and 50% of adults who are autistic have considered it. This is probably because of how hard it is to grow up in a society that doesn't accept you or listen to you. For kids, it's probably the bullying and struggling to fit in, plus trying to extend and accept themselves. For adults, it's a struggle to get a job and have a social life. This needs to be talked about more. There needs to be suicide prevention in the autistic community. Unfortunately, I still struggle to fit in and be accepted, and still get suicidal at times 10 years later because of the things I went through during my time in school. Starting in 7th grade, my depression got to a point where I would miss school sometimes or leave early. But things got worse in late 2009, when in late 2009, my stepdad made out with me, and it scared me. He was drunk, so we blamed it on that, and he told me he didn't have romantic feelings towards me. Unfortunately, almost 4 years later, I found out the truth. But before then, in early 2010, in the middle of my 8th grade year, I moved away to Virginia, leaving the two friends I had behind, which made me extremely lonely. It was also hard for me because I had a dog in Florida named Ray. God let him rest in peace. But when I moved to Virginia, I had to give him away. Also, when I was in Florida, I had a trampoline where I used for exercise. And also to do with my emotions. But I also had to give that away as well. I remembered when I was going to my new middle school, a girl told me that nobody liked me. Later that year, I started high school. High school was really, really hard for me. It was hard for everyone, don't get me wrong. But there were challenges that came up during high school that I still deal with to this day. I was always anxious and awkward in school, but when I entered high school, these feelings increased dramatically. This is when I started hating school. I still tried to be invisible and not draw attention to myself. This was also the time when I started going to psychiatrists and taking medications, but the meds never worked for me. I did make some friends, but during my sophomore year, some friends that I made ended up bullying me. Now, whenever I was bullied, I did tell my mom, but I didn't want her to do anything because I felt like I didn't deserve to be advocated for. When my mom advocated for me, I was embarrassed because I didn't want to draw attention to myself. Now I regret being embarrassed. My mom showed me what advocacy was, and I strive to be the advocate that she was for me, for other people. Anyway, this bullying caused me to be homebound. In the beginning of junior year, I ended up going to a new school. Junior year ended up being the worst year of my entire life so far. In the middle of my junior year, I moved to Georgia, so that means I was lonely again. My stepfather came and lived with us again. A few months later, my grandma passed away, and I had a falling out with my best friend who I was in love with, and we didn't talk at all for 2 years. After that happened, I asked my stepfather the question I was wondering about for over 3 years. Did he ever have feelings for me? And he said no, so I was relieved. A few weeks later, however, I was proven wrong. On May 2nd, 2013, my stepfather raped me. It was the worst day of my entire life. It happened after my mom left to do some errands. When he called me beautiful during it, I've never felt so ugly in my whole life. I've never been so scared before. He told me not to tell my mom, but I couldn't hold it in. I called my mom and she kicked him out. When he was packing his stuff, I remember telling him I loved him and that he loved me too. I said that because I felt bad for him and that it was my fault that it happened. But I didn't mean it. I didn't love him, and I still don't. I hate his guts for what he did to me and my family. We will always hate him and we will never forgive him. Afterwards, I went to a sexual assault group. They were Christian based, and they preached that you have to forgive in order to feel better. I completely disagree. I'm here to tell you that you don't have to forgive in order to feel better. If you think it'll help you, then by all means do it, but you don't have to in order to feel better. I personally can't forgive him after all the abuse he inflicted on me and my family. What sucks was that he was in my life for 12 years, and he was part of my childhood, so whenever I think about my childhood, he's in it, and I hate it. The worst part is that it takes time. It's been 5 years since it happened, and I still think about it every single day. But I know eventually I won't think about it as much. My family and I did report him to the police, but since the age of consent here in Georgia is 16, they couldn't do anything because I was 16 when it happened. Which is weird because you're a minor when you're 18, so technically I'm a victim of pedophilia, so isn't that enough? I don't get it. I have to accept that I'll never get justice, and that's hard, but I'll get there eventually. I support Me Too and Time's Up, but what needs to be in the conversation are women with disabilities and neurodiverse women whom are more likely to experience sexual assault. These stories need to be told so the people who commit these horrors will get what they deserve. We also need support services so that if it does happen to us, if it happens to us, we can better cope with the trauma. I finished junior year, but when I entered senior year, I was 2 classes behind where I should have been by that point, so I tried making up for it, but it was stressful. New school, which had an autism program. It was my first time being in special ed classes. I even attended IEP meetings for the first time. However, it didn't make things any easier. Even though I took special ed classes, I still also took regular classes. The stress eventually pushed me over the edge. I had meltdowns in school and I was suicidal. One time I thought of burning the school building down with no one in it. This really concerned the people at the school, so in the middle of the school year, they suggested I go to another school, so I did. It was a GNET school, so what they did was just give you assignments and you pass. I didn't emphasize learning, but I'm ashamed to say that it helped me get through the rest of the year. However, I was still under 2 classes to graduate. The next semester, I took 2 semesters of 2 classes in 1 semester so I can graduate as soon as I could because I was tired of school. I regret that decision. My anxiety went through the roof because of all the work. Because of the stress, I then developed OCD. I did end up graduating in December 2014. I didn't really have a passion for a career during school, partly because I didn't think I would make it this far. Even though I had IEP meetings, they never talked to me about a plan after high school. I didn't want to go to college because I knew it would be stressful, but I did end up trying it. Even though I only took one class, the stress was too much for me, so I dropped out. So I was stuck, and I'm still stuck, but I'm starting to have a
career plan now. I want people to know that college isn't for everyone and that there are careers out there that doesn't require a college degree. During this time, my OCD got worse. I used to wash my hands so much, my hands got red. I had to wear gloves, and my mom would have to watch me shower. Thankfully, it has gotten so much better, but it's still there. I still struggle with cleaning things in fear of getting dirty and washing my hands. So I make my mom and sister do the cleaning, and I feel really bad that I do. I'm gonna try and change that. During this time, I did something that I still regret to this day. I had fights with my mom and sister every once in a while, and I got so angry I would hit them when we would fight. I haven't hit them in over 3 years, and I've never done it again, but I regret it to this day. Even though autistics have violent outbursts sometimes, it doesn't mean we're the violent people the media portrays us to be. Even though my family has forgiven me, I'm struggling to forgive myself. I had limited social interaction, so I was depressed and lonely again. There were no opportunities for me to meet people because I didn't go to college and I didn't work, but thankfully that soon changed. I also struggled with being a gay autistic lesbian, and I still do. I always thought I was bisexual, but near the end of 2013, I went to a Macklemore concert, and 2 women got engaged on stage, and I started sobbing, and I realized this is what I want. Due to poor social skills, it's hard for me to make connections with people. Combined with how hard it is for a gay person to meet other gay people and find a life partner, it's a struggle. Ever since I was raped, I became more passionate about what's right. I continued to fight against sexual assault, social injustice, and making the world a better and safer place for autistic people. I keep learning about social issues. I attend marches and to try to voice my beliefs. Thankfully, I finally met people who share the same passion as I do. In 2016, I met Aaron Denberg Niederhofer, who introduced me to Autistic Self-Advocacy Atlanta, back when it was called ASAN of Atlanta, and I met a whole group of autistics, women and men, where I feel like I belong. The next year, someone from ASAA named Bennett suggested I go into the tech field because it didn't require a college degree, so he introduced me to Kim Creighton, and the 3 of us co-founded the Spectrum Codes, which helps people on the autism spectrum get careers in tech. Then Aaron suggested I join the Bobby Dodd Institute, back when it's called AADD, ambassador program, where I trained to be an autistic self-advocate under Kylie Moore. During the ambassador program, I met Mark Crenshaw, who wanted me to be in LEND, Leadership Education and Neurodevelopmental Disabilities program, and so the following year I became a part of it. This is an exciting program for me to be a part of. I have encountered many new opportunities. I still spend most of my time in my room being lonely. I still feel like I'm a mistake and I'm stupid and I want attention all the time. Sometimes I'm the only autistic, gay, or Latinx person in any given space, and it makes me uncomfortable. My dad still isn't around in my life as he should be, and I still think of this trauma from my stepfather every day. My grandmother, my mom, and my sisters have depression, so it's hereditary that I have it as well. After almost a decade, I still haven't found the right psychiatrist and the right kind of combination of meds. I've also tried a number of therapists, but it was only until a couple years ago that I found the right one. Through all this, I've been struggling with my weight. It definitely isn't helping my diabetes. I'm just really tired of fighting to stay alive and to be okay. I need strength to keep going, so if anyone can help me get that strength, please let me know. The effects and trauma of my past are the reasons I still have problems I deal with today. I'm not depressed because of my autism. I'm depressed because of the way people treated me because of my autism. I wanted to end my story so badly. I just wanted all my pain and suffering to go away forever and for me to go along with it. I still do at times, and I have to deal with all of this for the rest of my life, and I hate that. However, I'm still here. Even after numerous attempts over the past decade, and my story isn't over yet, so it's gotta mean something. Things are getting better for me. But I still need help so I can manage everything better and be happy. You're not weak for asking for help. You are strong to ask because you have the courage to fight for your life. If you have to struggle every day and to be happy, if you have to struggle every day to be happy, you are not alone. We as autistic women need our voices to be heard because neurotypicals need to know we exist and we need support. As people learn more about autism, we need to make sure it gets diagnosed quickly in all genders and treat genders with autism differently. A girl experiences life on the autism spectrum differently than a boy, so we need services that will cater us. We also need to make sure that women on the autism spectrum Other neurodiverse women and women with disabilities are heard in the Women's March and the Me Too and Time's Up conversations because our rights are just as important as neurotypical, able-bodied women's rights are. Disability rights are human rights. It is a tough world being a woman. It's a tough world being autistic, so being both at the same time is too much for me and other women to handle at times. We need to make sure there are support services specifically catered for us by people who understand us. It would have been really helpful for me while I was growing up. We need to make sure future generations of autistic women won't feel alone and that they will have the support that they need. In addition, we need a better representation of us in the media. When autistics are portrayed in the media, it's always the white boy geniuses or violence-related stories. I've never seen a female autistic in any form of media, let alone a female and lesbian/woman of color autistic, and that really needs to change. Media should represent all forms of autistic so all autistics can see themselves represented. In turn, people learn and understand more about autism. Also, don't try to be perfect. I wanted to be perfect all my life, and I'm just now accepting that I can't because no one can. Finally, just accept yourself. Your autism isn't a flaw. It is a part of you that helps set you apart, so accept it. Focus on your strengths so you can grow and succeed. The only person that needs to love you is you. Writing this speech has actually been therapeutic for me because I'm getting it all out, and that has been I'm getting all of it out that has been inside of me for so long. Thank you for letting me share my story, and may it inspire others.